So, all right. Thank you for arranging this, Magdalena. This is really fantastic. I really enjoyed listening to all the presentations so far. Well, today and last Friday as well. My name is Cecilie Brøns. I'm a classical archaeologist, and I work in the New Carlsberg Glyptotek in Copenhagen. Yes, I will just go to the next slide. Yes, just a brief CV to tell you a little bit about my background. I received my master's in classical archaeology from the University of Copenhagen back in 2009-2010. And that was on actually already then a little bit on textiles. It was about gender in Italian Iron Age graves, particularly focusing on the use of fibulas for dress and also as markers of identity. And then I continued with a PhD at the National Museum of Denmark and the Center for Textile Research, CTR, here in Copenhagen. My main supervisor was Marie-Louise Noche, who some of you might know. The topic of my PhD was quite different. It was about textiles in Greek sanctuaries in the first millennium BC. And directly after my PhD, I started a postdoc at the New Carlsberg Glyptotek, a museum here in Copenhagen, with a completely different topic, actually, because now I was working on polychromy of ancient art and architecture. So actually, by first impression, I thought I had left the field of textile research, but as I will show, it turns out that I didn't. And after my postdoc, I had a fellowship for a year at Harvard Center for Hellenic Studies in Washington, D.C., where I worked on the senses and the effects of the senses on our perception of ancient art. And after my fellowship in the US, I returned to the museum in Copenhagen, now as a senior researcher, and I'm now a curator also as well, and a permanent position, yay, at the museum. Again, working on polychromy, but actually in a wider way. But I will present more about this in a few minutes. There it is. Yeah, this is where I work now, just to show you a picture of my amazing, well, not my museum, but the museum where I work, the Glyptotek in Copenhagen, which has a very large department of ancient art and archaeology. And I hope if you all get the chance to come to Copenhagen sometime in the future, when the pandemic is over, I hope you will come visit me in the museum. It's really a wonderful place. And this is one of the rooms in the museum, and just to illustrate what I work on now, our collection, we have a very large collection of ancient Greco-Roman art, and I work primarily on the colors of these marble sculptures, like how they were originally painted and their original appearance. And I am the director of a big interdisciplinary project called Tracking Color. This is just a screenshot from our homepage, where we upload some of the research we have done at the museum to make it available to everybody, so people can see which colors that were used for this and this statue and so on. And it's a project which has been ongoing for about, well, at least 10, 12, 13 years now, and I've been the director of the project since 2015. So, but it's not just me who work on this topic in the museum, of course. It's an interdisciplinary endeavor. So I work together with a lot of colleagues, primarily in the natural sciences. I work, of course, together with conservators, but I also work together with chemists and physicists and geochemists and geologists, etc., etc. And we employ a lot of methods adapted from the natural sciences and developing them to track the colors on cultural heritage objects. And here you see some of my colleagues working. To the left, you see a tent, because sometimes you need complete darkness to be able to do some of these investigations. So yeah, so we bought a huge black tent so we can work in the collections. And then the other images, you see some of my colleagues working with some of the different instruments we use. There we go. This is just to illustrate one of the methods we use for our investigations. It's called visible induced luminescence, or just in short, VIL. And it's a photographic method, which is really, really useful for polychromy research because, well, first of all, it's non-invasive. You basically use a camera with a certain filter, well, an adapted camera with a certain filter, some special lamps, and then you do the photos in complete darkness, hence the tent, for example. And this method can improve the use of one specific pigment called Egyptian blue, the world's first synthetic pigment, actually. And this is just a really nice example. Well, I think it's a really nice example. It's a Roman marble sculpture from the 2nd century CE, the so-called Sciarra Amazon. And as you can see on the images to the left and the right, the detailed images, these are VIL images illustrating the use of Egyptian blue. And you can see there was a colored border on her garment. So actually, although, as I mentioned, although I thought I had left the field of textile research, I actually hadn't, because this is just a different angle of working with textiles in iconography. Sorry. Oh, there. And this is, let's see, sorry, it's going too fast. Sorry about that. And this is another detail of the same sculpture of the Sciarra Amazon, where you can see a close-up of her foot with a sandal. And to the left, you see like a normal photo, how it appears when you look at it with the naked eye. And to the right, you see the detailed taking of the VIL photo. And you can tell Egyptian blue has been used for her sandal. Of course, part of it on her ankle, that's also sculpted in the marble, but the rest of the sandal has just been painted on, and you can actually not see it with the visible eye. So it reveals details which you cannot see anymore when you just look at the sculpture. So this is really, really useful also for investigating the dress as depicted on ancient sculpture. And this is another example of a sculpture in our collection. It's of the goddess Cybele from about 60 BCE. And it just a few close-ups of the wealth of colors we have actually found on her. There are blue, different shades of blue, purples, reds, and actually also gilding as well. So it has so many colors, it's amazing. And her original garments have just been, yeah, like a rainbow. And this is just to illustrate how we also work. And this is the mapping of the little spots of paint. And I know it doesn't look like much maybe, but it actually is quite a lot when you deal with marble sculpture, because the paint has usually deteriorated when in the ground. So this is really a lot, and there's a lot to tell. I look forward to work more on this particular sculpture to be able to make a reconstruction of her garments, how they were originally painted. And yeah, another example just to illustrate that polychromy research is also really useful for textile research, at least when it comes to iconography. This is a third sculpture in our collections of Fundilus Doctus, 1st century CE. And as you can see to the left, the original, there's not much to see, but it has been examined very closely by my colleagues. And my colleague, Amalie Skovmøller, who's an expert on this group of sculptures, has made some reconstructions, possible reconstructions, showing him in an orange toga, which I find quite amazing, actually, and a peculiar color choice for a toga. Yes, and I will see if this will work. I hope so. Yes, this is a digital reconstruction I have done on one of the portraits we have in our collection from Palmyra, ancient Palmyra. And again, most of the colors have been lost, but I have worked closely with my team to examine it, and we did this digital reconstruction, as you see to the right, the final reconstruction, and the left you see the video with the different stages illustrating how we have reconstructed it. So this is really, really interesting, in my opinion, also how important it is to have a quite considerable knowledge of ancient textiles to be able to make these reconstructions, to understand how these garments were actually rendered and what they were trying to convey in their reconstructions. Sorry, it's a little bit slow. Oh, let's see, yeah. Oh yeah, it's just a last topic I would like to illustrate to this group. And that's the overlaps in craft traditions between polychromy, painting, and textiles, textile production actually, and that regards to colorants, because there's so many overlaps between the raw materials used for painting as well as for dyeing textiles. And I was really surprised by this, coming from the field of textiles, entering polychromy research, because polychromy also, they employ often a lot of organic colorants, such as shellfish purple, kermes, madder, woad, indigo, and saffron, for example. All these colorants are used for both. And I think this overlap is really, really interesting, also from a gender perspective, often thinking this stereotype of women producing textiles and men painting sculptures, for example, men being like the artists. So I think it's really interesting that at least are several overlaps with regard to the colorants and colorants used for both fields. And yeah, again, particularly madder is really, really interesting because, as you all know, it was widely used for dyeing textiles, but it was also really, really widespread use as a pigment called madder lake. And we find it on so many artifacts during antiquity, from earliest times and up through time. And I will just give you an example. What we have examined here, it's a mummy portrait in our collections. One of the methods we use is something as relatively simple as UV imaging, like ultraviolet imaging. And to the left, you see a regular image of the mummy portrait, this beautiful young lady wearing a purple garment of some sort. And to the right, you see a UV image. And here you can see the colors have changed. And her garment, which is purple, is luminescent in a very red nuance. And that illustrates that there's an organic lake has been used, probably madder lake. And we see it on so many things what we examining. And especially with the mummy portraits, actually, you can tell that they often try to use, I don't know if it's deliberate or not, to use the correct colorants for depicting the garments. They often use madder lake for depicting these garments, and also sometimes indigo, which is really interesting in my opinion. So that was it I had to say today. And of course, I hope you will contact me if you have any questions or comments or good ideas on my email. And there's also our website, trackingcolor.com. And we're also on Facebook. And of course, I have a profile on academia. So thank you so much.